Hello, my American Studies 140 students. This is Professor Donald Earl Collins talking to you with week 3 of our summer 2020 X class around DC, life inside a monument, life in DC history and culture. Um, this message is really directed toward you to try to keep you focused on the things that are coming up in the next couple of weeks, because at the ends of week 3, 4, and 5 are pretty much the bulk of the course in terms of your assignments. You have a final reflection to do week 6, but this week is where we start ramping up in terms of readings, in terms of audiovisual materials, in terms of assignments that are due. At the end of this week, which is, let me do the math very quickly, June the 7th, you have due your second reflection for the course, which is based roughly on the discussions that we're having via video chats and materials readings from weeks 2 and 3. So that's DC history from 1870 to the present, and talking about education, the education, its institutions and issues revolving around DC, pretty much from the 1950s on. So I'll post lectures for this week that deal with Marion Barry's Washington and deal with education in DC from 1950 to the present. So you'll have that. Okay. But the main thing, of course, is you have a paper due at the end of week 4, and you have a project proposal that's due at the end of week 5. I want to spend some time this week during our video chat talking a little bit about your project proposal and a little bit about your paper. I'll spend some time on it here. No later than the end of the day on Wednesday, I will post your paper assignment questions. You'll have 2 questions to choose from, both revolving around issues around gentrification in DC and around actually gentrification, white flight, food access and food geographies, and Marion Barry's Washington more broadly, which brings in a host of issues, including white flight out of the city, black migration to the city, the emergence of the city as Chocolate City, the aftermath of the uprisings and riots in DC of 1968, and what that led to in terms of Marion Barry's Washington in terms of public services, particularly around education. So all of those things are involved. I'll have 2 questions, one probably more focused on Ashante Reese's book, Black Food Geographies, and just focused on all those issues in general, and one dealing with some of those issues at the same time, where you can probably incorporate some of Reese, but Reese isn't centrally focused. So there'll be 2 questions. You'll get to pick and choose between those 2. Students have a tendency to pick the question that seems to be the easiest, meaning if it's shorter, it's easier. That's not the case. Both questions are probably going to be equally complex. So do not be fooled by the length of one question and assuming that because the question's only, or the topic or the prompt, if you will, is 5 lines long, that it's easier to deal with than a prompt that's 10 or 11 lines long, because there are fewer questions in the first prompt than in the second prompt. Oftentimes, the shorter question or a shorter set of questions in that prompt makes it harder, not easier, to deal with. So just some sort of fair warning there. Your project proposal, if you take a look at your syllabus, is just step 1 of what would be a multi-pronged process, if you are doing a full-fledged semester version of this course, a 15 or 16-week version of this course, where you wouldn't just write a proposal, but you would actually try to write a first draft of an executive summary, or a second draft of a second executive summary, or a first draft of a paper, a research paper, or a second draft of a research paper on a particular DC or DMV related topic. And there are a lot of things to pick from. The list that's in the syllabus is not exhaustive. You can pick from anything. You could be contemporary and talk about the impact of coronavirus in DC or in the DMV. You could talk about the impact of unemployment in DC and the DMV. You can talk about the protests and the demonstrations that have been going on around the White House and across D.C. and the DMV over the past week with regard to George Floyd and Arnon Arbery and um, Breonna Taylor and a host of other folks who've um, been brutalized and killed by police in the last couple of weeks, and how that's impacted the DMV as a whole. So it could be contemporary, but you could also be looking at food geographies outside of Deanwood. You could be looking at the devolution of Chinatown to basically being this corporate-sponsored sort of white culture version of gentrification, as opposed to a place that really represents Chinese American culture. You could be doing um, the business district of U Street and how it's become more inclusive over the years. That it's not just an African American community, but it's an African black community with an Ethiopian presence, with a Somali presence. It's with a gay and lesbian and transgender and bisexual presence. You could talk about decriminalization of marijuana in DC and the mix of laws and that sort of governs those things. You could talk about, you can be historical, but in any case, you want to write a proposal that addresses those things, and the criteria for the proposal are listed in the syllabus as to what is expected. You need to have some sort of argument or sort of problem or topic or issue that you're trying to deal with in specific. You can't do all of DC around most of these things, right? But you can pick a neighborhood. You could pick Adams Morgan. You could pick I'd prefer if you didn't pick Georgetown, because people tend to think of Georgetown as Georgetown University, not Georgetown, the entire historical district of Georgetown. You could decide to do something on DC public schools, but again, you're limited by the fact that schools aren't open. It's not easy to get in contact with officials at this point, that kind of thing. But you could still write a proposal around DC, and you want to tailor it so that it's pretty specific. Looking at high schools, or looking at elementary schools, or looking at special education in DC, and so on. And my point is, there are tons of things to pick. Do some research, do some reading, figure out what you want to do. We're going to talk about it a little bit that during a video chat on Thursday. But it's a proposal that's supposed to be 2 to 4 pages, and part of that proposal is figuring out what you need to do. What would you need to do if you were trying to carry out what's being proposed in order to earn an A? That's the bottom line. That's basically what I'm asking you to do. Provide an overview of the topic, provide some sense of what resources you need in order to complete said topic, provide some sort of a problem or argument, that sort of addresses the topic, and ultimately what you need to do in order to complete it. And that's as far as you're going to be able to get, because there's not enough time in this course for you to go ahead and do the full-fledged project. So, and also, just as an aside, normally I give students a choice between group projects and individual projects, or writing an individual research-based paper. And the truth is, again, not enough time, and logistically, with half the class overseas and half the class scattered across the United States, not realistic to do. So there's that. But in terms of the readings and other materials for this week and for next week, you need to be proactive. When we get on Thursday, I'm not rehashing the lectures that I'm posting on Blackboard for you, that I'm posting on YouTube and putting on Blackboard for you. It would be a waste of time to summarize what I've already summarized, and I might here and there give sort of 5-minute or 3-minute diatribes to help explain a few things if you have questions. But the primary purpose of these video chats is for us to discuss what you folks are reading, what you folks are watching, what you folks are listening to. Some of the materials that are available for this week and next week are optional. Like for this week, there on the Marion Barry section, there's a documentary called The 9 Lives of Marion Barry that HBO did about 9 or 10 years ago. It's available through Amazon Prime. I think you might be able to find it on Netflix. I'm not 100% certain about that, but it's not free. So if you do not want to spend the $1.99 or $2.99 to watch it, then you don't have to watch it. It will give you more insight into what my lecture notes say about Marion Barry, but it's not necessary to have the discussion. The Education Michelle Rhee, on the other hand, which is a video that's part of the education package, lecture notes and general materials on the education section of this course, is available. You can actually get it directly, I believe, through AU's library online. At least it was as of a month ago, because I used it a couple of months ago, so I used it that way. If not, it certainly is also available through paid sources. Again, if you can't get it, fine, it's okay. You don't need to watch Michelle Rhee's, Education Michelle Rhee's Frontline documentary in order to get that. So there's that. There are a couple of other ones that will be coming up in the next couple of weeks that may or may not be available. The Check It docuseries is available. It's through AU. You can get it through AU's digital collection online. As long as you have your ID, your student ID, and other materials, you should be able to watch it. So there's that. And that's really dealing with LGBTQIA plus Washington, right? So some things are available, some things are optional. If you can, try to watch these or listen to what is available. If not, and if it's a paid source, you are under no obligation to buy it. And I have those things listed as optional in the syllabus and in the class schedule section of what you're supposed to read. So let me know if there are any glitches on Blackboard or anything else. Please be proactive. Please be self-directed. Please try to stay on top of this. I know this is hard, right? Online is hard because of the fact that it's not, I can't just lecture you and drone on and on for 2.5 hours and you just absorb it. You actually have to do more of the groundwork yourself. But at the bottom end of it, it leads to richer discussions and more involvement, bless you, among students. So anyway, so that's that. Please email me at collinsd@american.edu if you have any questions. Otherwise, let's get started with week 3.